There we are. All right. So as I was saying, first of all, sorry I'm wearing a hoodie. It is unreasonably cold here in Florida. I think it's in the 40s again tonight. It was like 24 degrees on Saturday here in Orlando, Florida. Um, all the fountains at Disney froze, and there's ice everywhere, which was fun but weird. And there were in fact snow flurries in Orlando, Florida. So end of times is coming. Oh, what happened? My face got
I
really
heard
big.
about the iguanas that are just falling to the floor.
So that happens all the time. It is iguana falling season. Once it gets below like 40 degrees, they go into what's it called? Rumination. Yeah,
Okay.
rumination.
When it gets
They
too cold.
yeah, they just kind of fall asleep. What was really cool, there was a video of the alligators in Louisiana because the swamps froze.
Yeah.
And the
I saw
alligators,
videos of those too.
yeah.
They s- they point their noses up outside of
Huh?
the ice. Like they point their noses up outside of the ice so that they could breed.
Yep. Because they essentially hibernate.
Yeah.
I had
It's
to
funny
break.
how their
Go
oh
ahead. No, go ahead.
no, I'm saying it's funny how their body temperatures drop to allow them to hibernate like that in that cold weather, like slow their heart down,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, them, turtles, frogs, they all just kind of they ruminate. But I had to break the news to some people because in the state of Florida, if you capture an invasive species, you can't release it back into the wild. You have no choice but to euthanize it. So I had a friend a couple months ago who caught he had armadillos tearing up his backyard. So he caught one in a trap.
Mm.
He's like, "Where can I release this?" I'm like, "You can't. It's a state crime to release that in the wild because it's a invasive species." He says, "What do I do with it?" I'm
Mm.
like, "Yeah, you gotta take it to a farm upstate. It doesn't get to be here anymore. It doesn't get to live in this land." So there were all these news reels today and yesterday of all the people in South Florida going and gathering all the iguanas that fell.
Iguanas.
Yeah, so they had like
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of these in buckets, and like, oh, where are they releasing them? I'm like, they're not releasing them. They can't
Kind of
release
sad,
them.
but I get that.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I feel like the Burmese pythons would be more of a nuisance to me than those,
The
iguanas. But
the
again,
the iguanas are so the pythons are actually less of a nuisance as far as like populated areas are concerned because they don't come there. They're all in the glades in the trees, but they're eating the indigenous species that don't have because they don't have any predators. So they're eating
yeah.
all the birds and the fish, and so it's hurting the natural wildlife. The iguanas are in populated areas, and they're like digging under. They're digging in the ground and going underneath houses and
Oh, I
undermining
see.
foundations and falling on people. So yeah, they just had a huge Burmese python hunt here a couple of months ago. They do it once a year, the Great Snake Hunt, and they try to people go out and try to catch the longest python. There's prizes for it, and yeah, the problem, the great thing about Florida and the problem with Florida is that um the environment here is receptive to pretty much any reptile, amphibian, or fish to exist and procreate with abandon. So
That's fair.
in after Hurricane Andrew came through here in 95, there was a very large poisonous reptile center in Miami that got trashed. So they all got into the glades. People had their
Mhm.
own snakes, and people buy pythons. And what happens is they buy the Burmese pythons for pets, and they're like, "Holy crap, this thing got big!" So they let it go. They sent it off to the wild. So I've seen the snakes come out of the wild that are like 15, 25 feet long. Um, there
Uh,
are there are so are you guys familiar with Tarzan? Okay, so
yeah.
you probably know the Disney film. So in the 50s, there was a Tarzan movies were filmed, and they were filmed in Florida on the West Coast. in a place called Silver Springs, and China Weissmuller was Tarzan, blah blah blah. But when filming stopped, they had 3 or 4 dozen Rhesus monkeys that they just released into Florida. So
Mm,
up in Northwest Florida, there are like troops of monkeys that live in the glades,
that's
and
crazy.
you see them swinging around. So there's piranha out there. There's all sorts of nonsense out there that people just let go. That's why you can't have piranha as pets in Florida anymore because people just let them into the water. So there's piranha out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, but this is not a class on the flora and fauna of Florida, although I can talk about that for a very long time. I could talk about Florida wildlife because I love the Everglades. I love the flora and fauna of Florida. I love the fact that people who come here, the thing they're most afraid of is alligators, and that is the number one thing that will not hurt you. Because if you want to get hurt by
Um,
if you get hurt by an alligator, it's because you asked the alligator to hurt you because they don't care who you are. Um, there was a hurricane here a couple of years ago, about 20 years ago. I was staying with a friend because I was in an apartment at the time, and 3 hurricanes came back to back to back, and I was living in West Palm, and it was flooded, and water was probably knee high. We were walking around.
mm,
And the guy who was with me, we were seeing if we can get out of the apartment, the housing complex we were in. So he drove as far as he could and started walking. So when you're in floodwaters in Florida, the amateurs look for alligators. The
mm,
professionals look for fire ants because fire
okay.
ants, when a fire ant mound floods, the ants come up and form a ball and just float on the water. And if they touch anything dry, they climb straight up it.
Mm,
So if you're walking through the water and a fire ant mound hits you, you're going to be covered in ants, and those are not pleasant. But anyway, again, this is not flora and fauna. This is ILM 220, and we're in week 5. Thank you for indulging me on the quick TED talk on the wildlife of Florida. Like I said before, when I put the announcement out, I actually put the announcement for next week where we're going to do subqueries and correlated functions. Um, So I've got this week's code that I'm supposed to talk about and next week's code. So it'll just be a week ahead, which is fine because I'll just make more code for next week to talk about subqueries because that's a topic we can talk about for a while. Um, so before we begin, as is tradition with this class, does anyone have any questions on last week's assignment? Any questions on the final project? Any questions on anything other than the flora and fauna of Florida? Nope. Anyone cooking anything tonight? We got no banana bread tonight. You're making wings. No, okay, it's cool. I'm in my office, so I can't cook anything here. Make it like, get like a candle, make some s'mores or something, but where's the fun in that, right? All right. So let's talk about aggregates. Last week we talked about uh, uh, concatenation commands for text fields that take a bunch that you get to manipulate text fields. We had replace, we had concatenate, we had a bunch of other things. So we can take multiple text fields and make them into one, or to make them pretty, make them more understandable for the average person look at it. So what we're going to talk about tonight are aggregates. Aggregates are functions that exist within MySQL that that do mathematical functions for your query without you having to do it. Um, they are a little trickier than concatenations with text fields because there's a couple rules that go by it, and we're going to go over those rules tonight. So I got 15 examples here of aggregates, and we're going to be using the aggregate, and we're going to do the group by clause, and we're going to add the having clause to it. So here, the simplest one of the world is count. So what the count function does, it literally counts how many responses you get and gives you that number. So here, selecting count asterisk as total customers from customers. So all this is going to do is return how many lines, how many rows are in that. Oh, hang on, I didn't do this. Aha, there we are. How many rows are how many rows are in that thing? And it's 625 customers. So here we get a little fancier. Select count again, and I'm doing distinct first names. So distinct means what you think it means. It just returns every non-repeated value. So if there are 75 Joes in actor, it only returns one Joe. So we're doing how many distinct first names there are in actor, and there are 130. So we just did a quick query to see what those names were, and just take this out of the equation, and we just run this one. We have 130 rows returned. So here are the individual ones. If I take distinct out, it obviously returns 202 rows, and there's way more of them. So anyway, that's what distinct does and what count does. Min max again gives me the lowest number, and max gives me the highest number. So I'm gonna do film length out of films. The lowest film length is 46 minutes, the longest is 185 minutes. Average does you what you think average would do. It's a function that gives you the average of a column of numbers. Here we're gonna do the rental rate. So it's the average rental rate of all the rentals in film. That's gonna be $2.98. And sum does what you think it does. It gives you the total of that value. So it's gonna be how many payments have been made in the entirety of the database. So it's $67,000. Everyone with me? Simple stuff, right? Cool. So here, now I'm using a count, so I'm getting a count of something, but I'm doing something a little different. I'm selecting the column rating and then the count as film count from film, and I've got this command here called group by. Okay. When I am doing an aggregate function in a query where there are more columns than just the aggregate. So this one here is the aggregate, right? Call it the aggregate. Anything that's not the aggregate has to be in a group by clause to tell the query how to group the aggregate. So here, if I just did select count from film, it would give me how many films were in there. But what I want specifically is how many films are per each rating. Oh, here comes the baby. We're doing aggregates today, okay? I expect you to know this
Oh.
for the test. So what I want out of this is I want to get the ratings and how many of each rating is. So what I'm saying here is get me the count and group it by the rating. So when I run this, it's going to show me this. If I try to run this without the group by, it's going to throw an error. And you guys are lucky because 2 versions ago in MySQL, it threw some weird error saying, I don't remember what it said, but it didn't make any kind of sense. Now you're saying, hey, you're an aggregate query without a group by clause. It's telling you what you did wrong. So you guys are getting lucky these days because the queries were the error messages made no sense. Here we're doing the same thing. We've got rating and rental duration and count as film count by film. And here we're grouping by rating and rental duration. So now we're not only grouped by rating, by rental duration. So all the rental durations will be uh, um, earmarked, and then the count where these two are the same. So look at this. So PG with a rental duration of 6 days is 39. There are 39 of those, and so on and so forth. Okay. We can do these with joins. By the way, there was a question on the quiz last week, and I meant to bring this up at the beginning. It was asking you, it was something about which types of joins require the use of the on clause. And you had right join, left join, full join, inner join, and one other thing, cross join, right? And a lot of y'all missed You checked full join as one that used an on clause, and it was wrong. It's not that because it said which of the join clauses in MySQL require the use of on or something like that, right? Um, and I had a couple of you ask me, not y'all, but some other people pinged me and said, "Hey, um, the full join clause does require ons." I'm like, yes, but the question said which one's in MySQL, and full joins don't work in MySQL, so it was a trick question. It wasn't a trick
Yeah.
question. It was a question. But yeah, there are no full joins in MySQL. They left that out. So anyway, so here I'm doing a join. I'm doing first name, last name, and then I'm getting the total, the sum, how much that person spent. I've got to join customers and payment. Okay. And then I'm using where just the last name equals Smith. And I'm grouping by customer ID. Now, you say to yourself, Brother Stevick, you just said that any column that's in the select clause that isn't an aggregate, you need to have in the group by clause. But here you're lying to me because all that's there is the customer ID. How dare you lie to me not 5 minutes after you gave me a fact? Anyone care to guess why I don't need first name and last name in this group by clause?
So I could go for it.
Go for it.
All right, so because each customer can be grouped by the common key, which is the customer ID, you don't need to use the first and last name. You
Yep.
can just group it with a common key.
Yep. And that's the cheat. That's the cheat. So because customer ID and first name and last name are the same thing, you can do it by customer ID. Normally you would have put first name, last name here, but because it's customer ID, I just did that to throw you off. And here, there you go. Mary Smith, $118. I really need to come. I think I need to update Sakilla because no one rents videos anymore. You don't go to rental stores anymore and rent things. Anyway, here we go. We got another one here. Same thing, customer ID and how many payments they've made. So I just want the customer ID and how many payments they made from the payment table, grouping by customer ID. But I have this having thing here. So having is tantamount to a where clause for an aggregate. So I can't use, so if I'm trying to set a filter on an aggregate like payment count, which is doing a count of the payments, I can't use a where clause because it doesn't understand that. I've got to use a having clause. Okay. So having is a where clause for an aggregate. Do that. Boom, there's my answer. Okay. Here's another one, just payment staff ID, another group by. Um, Same thing there. Uh, name name is category name, count is film count, category joining film category. That's thing. Here's a very nice complicated one. I'm getting the name as category name and the average of the replacement cost from category, joining film category, joining film, grouping by name, having an average cost over $20. Okay. So I'm getting the category name, the average cost of replacing from all the films in that category, and then what is so action films on average take $20.91 to replace. So here we are we're using a command from last week, using the month function to pull month out of payment date, and then the sum. So what I'm looking at is what my total revenue is per month. Okay. So here I'm selecting count as total addresses, and I'm doing a count for address two. So if I look at address, you have to see what this table really looks like on the inside to understand how this one works. So I've got address and I've got address two, right? And I've got some nulls in address two. So when I run this, this is just the total amount of rows, and this is just how many entries are in address two. Oops. Notice the numbers are different because the count function ignores nulls. So if I run here, select from addresses, I have 603 rows and addresses, but I have 4 nulls. So when I run this, just the counts, it's 603 total, and I've got 599 in address two because 4 of them had nulls. Nulls are ignored in aggregate functions. So if you do an average in an aggregate function and you have 603 rows, but 10 of them are nulls, that total number is not divided by 603, it's divided by 593. You following that? That making sense? Yeah? Okay. So just remember, aggregates ignore nulls, which is another reason why nulls are of the devil. We don't like nulls, particularly in number columns. All right, let's look at this monstrosity. We're looking for the 5 most profitable film categories. So to get the category and the amount from payments, I've got to join 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables because I've got the category name and I've got to get to the payment table. So to get to connect category to payment, I've got to go through film category, I've got to go through inventory, I've got to go through rental, and then I've got to go to payment. I'm grouping by name, I'm ordering by total sales, I'm limiting it to 5. So this is a great example of when I talk about your in your final project, when I talk about you wanting to create a case study or a use case scenario on how I'd use the data. So if you were running a video rental store, you'd want to know what uh, what your top renting items are, what categories are getting the most money for me. So then I could like, oh, comedy's only pulling in. Well, if I got rid of this limit 5 and did everything, I could see, wow, music videos, DVDs for music are floundering. Maybe I'll do a sale on those or something. I'll like do a special, like rent two, get one free or something like that, you know? So when you're looking at your case studies for your final project, you want to come up with like, how would I use this data? What is the use case where someone comes and say, hey, I want to use this data for something? Any questions on aggregate functions? Nope. Pretty simple stuff. All right. So let's jump over to subqueries. And this is what I said the lesson was about today. So we're doing outer joins and we're doing subqueries. Okay. So I told you guys last time that you've got right joins, left joins, and inner joins. The inner joins are based on a column and only return the values that are in that column. So you'll never see nulls there. But when you do left joins and right joins, so here when I do that, I'm selecting the title and inventory ID from film. I'm joining inventory, film to inventory on the film ID column. And I'm doing it where inventory ID is null. Okay. So what this is saying is um, I'm left joining. So it's going to return everything that's in the film table and only the stuff in inventory that matches in the film table. So I'll get every film ID from the film table. Um, but anything that doesn't have a film ID attached to it in the inventory table will come back as null. Now this should return. So here, Atlas Fantasia has no inventory ID. Apollo Team has no inventory ID. Okay. But I returned all 42 rows from film. If I reverse this to a right join and run it, I have nothing in inventory that's not in film. I didn't return everything from inventory. That's weird. Oh, I know why. Yeah. So, all right. So here I'm selecting first name, last name, and amount from payment, joining staff on staff ID. So it's going to turn. Oh, this is just a regular right join. So it's going to return everything from staff, whether or not it has a payment or not. So it's going to return all my rows from staff, and then I might have some when there are nulls. You see all these are null at the bottom. Okay. So these joins are made to compare two tables to make sure everything is there that's supposed to be. All right. So let's talk about subqueries now. A subquery is when you take a query and put it within a query. It's like the inception of queries. So here I've got select title length from film where length is, and I want the average length of the film. So this is going to be the average length of film, which is 115 minutes. So this is going to return any film that's over the average length. Okay. Here I'm selecting title, and then I'm selecting the count from film as total film count from film. So when I run this, all this is doing is comes out to be 1,000. Okay. I can put a query in a select clause and have that value return. Now, does this query make sense? No, but you can do it. Let's get complicated. Selecting name, last name, and email from customer where address ID is in. Select address ID from address where city is in. Select city ID from city where country is in. Select country ID from country where country is in Canada. So I'm getting the country ID from Canada, which is 20. And then I'm getting every city that's in that country ID. And then I'm getting every address that's in that city ID and then comparing it to the customer table. So I only got 5 people live in Canada. There are better ways to do this, but this is just showing you how many times you can nest a query. So remember a couple weeks ago, week 2, we talked about how these queries run. The where clause goes first, and then the from clause, where the from clause goes first, and then the where clause and the select clause and all that other stuff. So I wish I could show you one, but you can't see this in MySQL. I'm gonna make a note to myself. Okay, AI system, when you do the notes for this meeting, put something in there that next week I need to start with showing you guys an execution plan. That's a trick I learned in my other job. When I use AI to give notes to the meeting, I have say things like that, and it'll like put at the top, do this next week. It gives me task lists for next week. So just a little fun thing I do because AI is, I'm not gonna lie, AI is dominating my life. I know it's not the cool thing and whatever, but it's just too handy. And it's built into this, so I'm gonna use it. Anyway, so I'm gonna show you the execution plan next week. What happens with this is this one runs first. And remember how I said the from clause takes whatever's in that table from the disk and puts it into memory? So this one goes first and does its thing, and then this one goes, and then this one goes, and then this one goes. So at one point in time, all four of those tables are going to have everything in memory. So if those are four significantly large tables, your RAM is going to be taking a pretty significant hit. So when I run this, and so there are 5 people from Canada. So again, this just shows you the granularity that you can do things in. I think I want to say the limit to subqueries in the number of subqueries you can do within one query is like 5 or 6. But as you can imagine, the more subqueries you do, the more complex it gets, the harder it is to execute the plan, and the more RAM it takes up. So try not to do that unless you absolutely have to. Um, in week 9, we're going to talk about these things called views, and a view will take care of this. Okay. Um, Here we go. Select title, length, and rating from film where length is greater than all. Running that. So we're gonna have all these lengths. So remember we did where length is in and you do an array. This lets you do greater than and all is it's kind of like what in does, but you use it with a equivalency. So where the length is greater than everything that's rated PG. So this gives me the array. This says use the array, and that says give me anything that's greater than that. And there's nothing bigger than that. Let's change it to G, maybe get some responses. G. Nope. Less than. There you are. Okay. So and notice it gives me the my subquery just thing with G, everything else comes back. So the reason we use subqueries, if I just had this query here and I had put a number there, just an arbitrary number, 100. Hello. What? Oh, okay. Okay, if I just had 100 here, right? And I run this, it gives me everything under less than 100, right? But this is what we refer to as a static query. That number is never going to change, and it's always going to be 100. And if I'm in a database, I'm running things for customers, I need some of the things to be more dynamic, right? So this gives me my first, anytime I use a subquery, I lean into more dynamic stuff. Okay. Because like in this one here, I'm getting anyone who's in Canada. Right now, there are only 5 people, but it's a customer database. So maybe this week, 5 more people from Canada join my become customers of mine. That number is going to grow. Okay. So when I use these subqueries, it gives me because this query, the results could change over time, right? So when I use this as a parameter in my where clause, that query is going to change and modify over time depending on what the results of that query is. This will never change because it's always, you may get more uh you get more titles that are less than 100, but here it's not 100, it's whatever this is. So here again, it's the length, running that, same query, just a little different parameters. So here is another use of a subquery. I'm selecting the average total amount from average revenue, but I'm not using a table. I'm using a query. So I'm getting the customer ID and some amount as total amount from payment grouping customer ID. So I get this query, I run this. This is what I get. And now I want to get the average of this amount based on this query. Okay. Again, I don't need to have a table and a from clause. I can use a query there. Okay. Oh. And here I've got a select query in my where clause. I'm getting the count from rental where customer ID is greater than customer. So I'm getting the count from rental. I'm getting this one here. It's giving me a number. Oh, oh. So that's right with this one. Notice there's no from clause. Oh, here it is. Here's run. This way. There's the from clause. There. I want this. Come here. Oh, so notice I'm getting the count from rental where r.customer ID equals c.customer ID. So this parameter, this parentheses query is grabbing this variable. And because it's in the same transaction, it can do that. So when I run this, it's giving me that count where these counts are under over 30. That's why I didn't return everything. Here, I'm selecting the first name and last name from actor. Where not exists, I'm selecting one from film actor joining film where the actor ID, I'm on the film, I join on the film ID, where the actor IDs match and the grading is G. So what this is showing me is what actors are in films that are rated G or in the same film that's rated G. So exist means is it there or not? So it's the only thing that will return a 1 is going to show up. And exist is binary, it's 1 or 0. So only the things that show up in here. That's not because the actor ID is not here. Okay. Selecting the first name, last name, and last rental date as max date from customer, and I'm joining a table to a select query. So I'm running this query here to give me the max date that someone was rented by. So I'm joining customer to this query on customer ID. And it shows me the last time someone rented something. So here is a query that's checking for duplicates in a table. So my subquery is select first name, last name from actor, having a count, group by first name, last name, having count greater than one. Now notice there's no aggregate here, but the having clause is there. So I'm just telling it to group by and not giving, I'm telling it to group by there to let me know which ones have a count greater than one, but I don't care what the count is. So here's another like tweak to this. I can use an aggregate without using an aggregate. So I'm running this, and I've got one that's Susan Davis. So when I run this, it's just going to give me Susan Davis. That there are two entries for Susan Davis. It's just looking for duplicates in the table. Here, I've got a subquery here. I'm selecting count from film actor where ID equals. I'm looking for the actor ID for film for Nick Wahlberg. Okay. So this query is I'm getting the first name and last name and the count of movies from actors who have more movies than Nick Wahlberg does. Okay. So again, this is another example of I have a database. What would my customers want to know? How would I use this data? If I had a film rental agency or I had a film rental, a video rental store, you know, someone might want to know how many more movies somebody's been in than someone else. Here, I'm finding category IDs and film IDs that don't exist in the category table, which there should be none since it's foreign keyed. But I'm selecting category ID from category, and then I'm looking to see if there are any categories that don't have films yet. So if I had a so here's the film category table. So here's where I've got film, and so every film is get its category from there because one film might have many categories. I want to see if there are any categories that have no films. So let's say I had a film category of gothic horror, and it was in the category table, but I have no films in it, so I know I need to go buy some films in that category. All right, that last query disappeared. All right, so again, these are just examples of and these last ones are next week's examples. So I'm gonna do more. I'm gonna get more complex subquery stuff for next week when we do this. Um, but these two, with the aggregate functions and with the subqueries, we're now moving into the world of how do we take the data that we're putting in here for our customers and how do we get the information out there that we need to give them? Like if you were doing a database for a baseball league and you want to do their stats, like on base percentage stuff like that, you would have functions for that. So you get that data because you would have everyone's at bats. You need to do the math about that, you know. So again, this was a lot for tonight, but you guys can handle it. I saw you nodding the entire time, so you're following me on this. But this is all, this will help you get through the exercise and help you get through the possum pets if you're doing that because you're not doing the final project. But this is to get your mind thinking of there are two kinds of DBAs. There are the DBAs who watch the tables and make sure everything works and the indexes are fine and the queries are running fine. And that's a great, that is a database administrator. Then you've got your developers. And the developers that's all great, but we need to get this data out there and show it to people in a way they understand. And that's kind of what we're focusing on in this class is how do you take a database and put the data in the proper way as the administrator part would tell you to do. But you got to put the data in correctly so it functions right. But how do you get the data out so people can understand what it looks like and gets the information that they want? All right. Any questions on anything I covered tonight? There was a lot. All right. You're my smartest students. I appreciate you being here every week. Thank you so much. Really, it's fun seeing you guys, and it saves me from talking to myself. If you have no other questions, it is 10:18 here on the East Coast, and the temperatures drop below 40 degrees. So I'm gonna go kick on my fireplace for the fourth time and probably final time this year, and try to get warm before I go to sleep. Keep it. Are you two doing the final project, or are you doing the final exam?
I'm doing the final project.
Excellent.
Same.
Excellent. All right. Good, good, good. Um, if you have any questions on it, let me know. I haven't seen the proposals from you guys yet, but I haven't done this week's assignment. I haven't done this week's grading yet. Or if I did see it, I don't remember it. But keep in mind that the Possum Pets part of the show, the weekly assignments, that is really not for you to Possum Pets, but let me know where you are with your final project. Feel free to do it if you want. Knock yourself out. But I need to know how you're doing your project. If any questions there, show me your schemas. Make sure that's going along. But I'm glad you guys are doing the project because the project is a lot of fun. I find that to be a lot of fun, and I designed it to be fun. So hopefully you'll continue to enjoy it. If there's nothing else, have a great week. Stay warm because you're probably somewhere colder than I am. Because we'll be in the 70s by Thursday, and then back into the 40s by Sunday. Our temperature is here weird. We were last Monday we were 80 degrees, and then by Friday we were 24. So we have roller coasters everywhere else, other places than theme parks. So, all right, guys, take care. I will see you next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.